We have the cash that people need. Sometimes people can't make ends meet, and we offer that to everybody.
Hardcore Pawn thrived in an explosive tension that could blow up at any time. But behind the scenes, things grew quieter as familiar faces began to disappear. Some willingly, others tragically. But just how hurtful were these disappearances to the show? Did it play any part in the cancellation of the franchise? Join us as we unveil what really happened to Hardcore Pawn's usual cast members who are no longer in the spotlight. Rich Pyle disappeared, forgotten, and eventually exposed. It is quite hard to imagine any episode of Hardcore Pawn without Rich. There was just something about him that kept everyone on their toes and kept fans glued to him. Some say it was the spiky hair and insane banter that kept him relevant, but others just saw something else. Something more intangible, but just as relatable. It was leadership. He wasn't just some character written into the crux of the show. He was the store manager at the American jewelry and loan shop in Detroit, owned by Les Gold. He got the store running, kept the chaos on a leash, and kept Les Gold happy in the process. But right amidst the happy chaos of everyday pawning and negotiations, fans begin to notice a gradual retreat from Rich. Often, he brought the energy and set the tone for the shop's mood that day. But what happens when this infectious hard worker starts to get tardy? Is it a personal choice? Some influence from his personal life? Or just tired of working with the Gold family? That's when everything shifted. Little by little, his appearance on camera dropped drastically until it became noticeable, creating a whirlpool of rumors around the show. But right after the 7th season, Rich was fired by Les Gold. There was no explanation, no explosive interviews or sending off, just absence and silence. Like always, True TV kept the show on the road, and Rich became an afterthought. However, fans still wanted answers even a whole decade after the show ended. For years, critics lived off speculations until Bobby Janiec's tell-all TikTok video changed everything. Like most fans, Bobby really loved Rich's energy. He watched him work and matched his sense of humor as few others could. According to Bobby's account, Rich's job as a store manager was to be at that layaway window, helping and cashing out when the other stars worked with their clients throughout the day, and he was fantastic at it. But suddenly, a bizarre situation happened at the pawn shop, creating some real tension between Rich and Les. Bobby believed television fame had gotten to him so badly that he took pictures outside the shop with fans rather than be at his post. And this is where it stops making sense. His luck ran out at the shop when he let a customer walk away with valuable 18-karat gold jewelry. And Les immediately wanted him out, caring very little about the fans' reaction to his absence from the show. But while fans came to terms with Rich's sudden disappearance from the show, Bobby's situation left everyone gobsmacked. Bobby Janiec, a familiar face that disappeared without warning. Bobby, affectionately called Bobby J by fans, was no ordinary pawn star. He was made for television and the brightest spotlights anyone could imagine. He loved the buzz, and the fans loved his infectious energy. For a while, he was super close to Rich, even though the latter was his boss. They had the same sense of humor and knew how to wrap up a deal without any fuss. This bald menace and his signature mustache became a fan favorite on his very first episode on the show, working closely with the shop owner, Les Gold, his son, Seth, and his daughter, Ashley. At first, Bobby and Les formed a relationship that exuded some serious confidence amongst viewers, thinking it might even last forever. But a few years down the line, they just couldn't see eye to eye. But just before his Les-sized problem, he had to deal with Rich. Before Rich was fired by Les, Bobby claimed that Rich had messed up his role on the show with his nonchalance and a desperate feeling to rule the roost without really putting in the work required anymore. However, he wasn't just fired, he was replaced by good old Bobby. The network suddenly took a liking to Bobby, citing his energy and humor as their yardstick for picking him over Rich. Nobody expected what Les did next, but that's what happens when preparation meets opportunity. With Les fully backing him, Bobby exploded into a star overnight, completely eclipsing Rich, inadvertently opening up Les to fire the tardy Rich. But Rich wasn't letting it go, and neither was his wife, who took to social media and flamed Bobby for stealing Rich's place. But Bobby was doing so well that it drowned out the criticism around him. Somehow, fans thought they had finally found the perfect Rich replacement, who kept the energy and sense of humor, but was way more dedicated to actually putting in the work. After a few years in this new role, he was fired by Seth Gold around 2014, but he was brought back quickly due to fans' demand and because the shop absolutely needed him. But after the show ended in 2015, fans still followed up on the shop's activity, and what they discovered changed everything. Yet again, another one bites the dust. Bobby has left the shop after a rumored behind-the-scenes showdown with Les Gold. For years, fans wondered how Rich's replacement could suddenly need a replacement so soon. Although it fit quite well with the recurring chaos motif that the shop had always spoon-fed the fans, it was still difficult to accept this roller coaster of changes without question. Fast forward to 2023, and he claimed that he just wanted out, so he moved to California, where he dabbled in stand-up comedy and found some real happiness, but just couldn't stay there. So, he moved to Michigan. Bobby claimed that he was being taken advantage of by Les Gold and the network. As expected, fans latched onto his words, with critics spinning the rumor mill yet again. Bobby revealed he was never hired for the shop in the first place. Instead, he was given a job at the warehouse, where he simply logged pawned merchandise and stayed in the background. Consequently, fans suggested that Les believed Bobby owed him for bringing him all the way up to the show, which was why he oppressed him. But if Bobby really disappeared because he was oppressed, what exactly happened to Ashley? Ashley Gold, the Gold who walked away. Amid all the tension, the shouting contests, and the negotiation tactics that often spiraled into senseless chaos, Ashley mostly kept a cool head. And no, it had nothing to do with her being a woman. She was just different. But she was no pushover either. Surely that came with the territory of the business, and being the daughter of a no-nonsense negotiator like Les. Growing up under a man who casts a large, intimidating shadow like Les meant only one thing. She was used to the pressure, understood the power plays, and could shut down a deal without raising her voice. It wasn't fear, it was composure, and maybe a reliance on their 6-foot security team to throw out a troublemaker without any real fuss. In other words, she just couldn't lose, and she knew it too. But this is where things started to get a little strange. Her persona somewhat proved divisive in the fan base, as some expected a bit more intimidating energy from her as a Gold. However, to others, her feminine touch balanced out the testosterone splashed across the screen in every episode of Hardcore Pawn. But as Ashley watched the shop's growth and handled the books, she seldom really got into a fight with the clients. Somehow, they just knew not to mess with her. Although some did not know better at first, the consequences followed swiftly. However, her real gripe was almost always against her brother, Seth. Mostly, Seth comes across as confident and, sometimes, just a little bit intimidating. He talks big, sets up ideas that go way out of the scope of Les's way of doing things, and would prefer not to be questioned. But that doesn't fly with Ashley. It never does. Somehow, She would be in his face, calling him out if ever he chose to take risks that would cost the shop any kind of money. But what came next caught everyone off guard. She simply couldn't do it anymore. So she left the shop in 2016. In an interview with WDIV, she revealed that she walked away from the chaos because it wore her out, deprived her of quality time with her husband and her kids, and she just couldn't deal with consistently being overweight. Consequently, she started her own online business, Pawn Chick Shopping, where she sells jewelry and dresses celebrities in trending fashion. But just how much does Ashley's leaving affect the power structure? Seth Gold, the heir who divided the empire. It is hardly news that Seth is considered the rightful heir to the Gold family's pawn heritage, and he has been built for that role. From his very first episode on the show, he was always somewhere putting out fires, but was not particularly averse to lighting one himself. This balanced position immediately made him a fan favorite, despite his status as Les Gold's son. Whether it was a negotiation gone wrong or the store risking some money, Seth was always there fixing things while Les focused on the big goal of expanding and possibly getting the shop a new deal with True TV to keep the show running. But nobody expected what happened next. It is a tale as old as time. Father and son are at each other's throats. Seth started as a kid, learning the ropes and trying to please his father. But things changed as he got older. He had new ideas for the store that rivaled his father's. He wished to be given a chance to pursue the avant-garde dreams he had for the shop. But that's not who Les is. He was the nonconformist type who believed in not fixing what isn't broken. It wasn't long before insiders claimed that Seth was considering his future beyond the show. While Ashley did get a properly processed exit, Seth was not so lucky and did not get a clean break. As the show neared its end in 2015, fans noticed the heir barely appeared as frequently as he used to. Could that be the beginning of the end? After the show came to an end in 2015, Seth reportedly kept up with the day-to-day running of the shop. However, it wasn't without planning his own things. For context, he was on the Gold Tone podcast on CBS, where he often discussed the art of pawning and a few juicy details here and there about the show. While the shop had barely leaned that heavily into social media escapades before Ashley's exit, Seth was finally taking it to a whole new level. So in 2023, he hinted at a huge social media presence for the shop. Seth got the bright idea of creating a TikTok page in March 2023, where he records videos of himself and other old cast members, including his sister, Ashley, modernizing the Gold family pawn shop for the next generation. Although Seth did choose to stay with the store, carrying on the family's pawn legacy, his story comes across to most fans as an episode of transformation. He went from that rebel who did whatever he wanted to a more measured man. If True TV calling time on the show wasn't enough to force the heir out, how did his father react to keeping his empire together? Les Gold, against all odds. When everyone else moved, thought about running, or just wanted to give up, there was one. Only one Les Gold. Les is a third-generation salesman whose grandfather ran the now-defunct pawn shop on Michigan Avenue in Detroit. He was always a salesman at heart, born into it, forged by it, and built to outlast everything. It is extremely difficult to ever imagine the hardcore pawn without the chain-wearing, no-nonsense menace that gets in everyone's faces when things do not go his way. Maybe that's how Les came off to the fan base, but sources close to him believed that he just wanted to create a legacy that no one could ever touch, describing his famous rows with Seth as a trial by fire for the latter, preparing for the eventual passing of the torch. But that's where things get interesting. The show peaked under his guidance from the start. Before he ever gave Seth a shot, at making some decisions. Although he never really talked about it, Seth almost stopped the cameras from ever rolling in the shop, in his own naive way, to protect the shop's image. However, Les, who wanted an empire at all costs, overruled his son. Although he built this empire with many people around him, especially Ashley and Seth, at its foundation, Ashley's choice to leave and Seth's effort to impose his avant-garde ideas were not enough to deter him from building the legacy in the way that he wanted. But can a man his age really pull things off without help anymore? Imagine a 70-year-old man sticking to his guns and expanding his business throughout strategic points of the nation, including Pontiac, Hazel Park, Lincoln Park, and Southgate, aiming to serve the downriver, even amid the possibility of kids leaving him to rule the roost alone. He wasn't the man to bet against, and fans saw that too. But what is the fear of going on the path of a difficult journey solo for a man who once sold pizza by slices in a Hebrew school as a kid? The network disappeared in 2015, stopping the show at its peak, even when he tried to keep it in the fold. However, there was Les's empire, and he was not ready to let it go just because they were no longer on television. So he did the unthinkable, holding on and overseeing the franchise without yielding his seat at the top of the food chain. But it all threatens to go downhill in 2023, when shocking news suddenly dropped. He had allegedly suffered a heart attack on April 9, 2023, and was rushed to a hospital in Detroit, where he was reportedly fighting for his life. But there was one problem. No official confirmation ever followed. It wasn't long before a narrative of his forceful habit of being involved in every decision concerning his chain of pawn stores, which ruined his health, took over the media. But it didn't take long before the rumors were debunked. But were Les and Seth really all that remained of the family core that started the show together? Karen Mitchell. Family is everything. When the curtains closed on the show in 2015, fans couldn't help but reminisce about some of its greatest cast members, one of whom was Karen Mitchell. Karen was near perfect in every scenario. She was a fantastic negotiator who had an eye for only the best merchandise that clients had to offer. That trait alone made her an undisputed fan favorite on the show. But just as much as she kept that seriousness during a trade, she was just as fun when it wasn't showtime. No one could really miss her, and if she wasn't on set, fans noticed. But beneath the jovial persona and tough negotiating tactic, she fought her own demons behind the scenes. Although she hid it perfectly behind that perfect smile, she couldn't hide the symptoms of her rumored unhappiness with some of Les's decisions. The long gazes, the sudden disappearance, and the gradual withdrawal from the spotlight became major concerns that sparked some rather disturbing rumors on social media. Although she wasn't really a part of the most popular ensemble like Bobby, Rich, and Ashley were, she had an effect on the fans that the network capitalized on. She felt the pressure-cooked environment every time the cameras doted on her. By the early 2020s, insiders claimed that she had almost completely disappeared from the shop, only showing up once every blue moon. According to sources close to the situation, she chose to live her life away from the spotlight because she wanted to raise a family of her own, away from the chaos. And her social media pages reflected that perfectly. Did she embrace it before? Absolutely. But spending more time with her kids and her husband took precedence. However, good old Karen was family anyway, a cousin to Ashley and Seth, and niece to Les. So, even though she was missing from the spotlight and avoided the cameras like the plague, sources claimed that she remained in charge of other aspects of the chain stores. More importantly, Karen's choice to remain a part of the shop, even without the cameras, hinted at something greater than fans once thought. Maybe the pawning, the negotiating tactic, and the chaos weren't exactly the legacy Les has created, but a family that sticks together to keep their salesman heritage alive, even if it means doing it away from the screens. Do you think that Seth made the right decision in the first place, not wanting the shop to ever be on camera? But with all the disappearances, can the show really be classified as family-oriented, as they say it is? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.